The Minnesota Vikings offense is going to look different this year. I'm going to tell you why. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Luke Braun, and let's find some joy today. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast wherever you find your favorite shows, whether it is a place where you listen to podcasts like SiriusXM, which we are partnered with, or YouTube, maybe even Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. And you're going to want to keep listening every single day because I think at some point this week, or at least soon, I'm going to have some pretty cool announcements about what's going down this season on this channel. Some pretty cool stuff that we've never done here before. So make sure you stick around. Today's episode is going to be all about the offense. So what we're going to do is I'm going to break down the offense for maybe people who didn't pay attention all offseason and want to know, okay, how are the Vikings different? Last time I paid attention to the Vikings, it was 4th and 8 on, in US Bank Stadium in the playoff game. What's different now? So I'll do that for the offense, and then Twitter Tuesday will be tomorrow, and then I'll do that for the defense, and then we're into crossover Thursdays and game previews, and we're into the season. So super broad strokes here. This might be repetitive to a lot of you. In which case, I'm sorry, but hopefully I'll have some new stuff in there for you as well, especially in regards to the passing game, which we haven't talked about a lot this offseason. So I want to start, though, with the personnel. And, who is here, right? Who is this offense comprised of and what to think of them? And it is a lot of the same people, almost entirely the same people. There's, of course, Kirk Cousins. Plenty of bottle of ink has been spilled on him. I think the biggest question with Cousins is what's the contract thing going to happen? What gonna turn out to be, right? So he's in a contract year. His contract will void on February 20-something, I believe, of 2024. So that's like 6 weeks after the regular season ends. And if they make the playoffs, that's even less. Does Kirk Cousins play well enough to earn another contract? It's going to be a thing we watch all year. And under Kevin O'Connell, the whole the line they parroted was, I want to quiet his mind. We want the quieted mind quarterback. And that was kind of the thesis was, with Zimmer, there was all this pressure and there was all, that relationship and all that background drama and all that stuff made him jittery and skittish and too afraid to make a mistake. We wanted him to calm down and play the ball he knows how to play. That was kind of the line we were served from the Vikings. And honestly, I think it did turn into a better quarterbacking performance. And I don't really care that it was like slightly less efficient because it was a little bit riskier. And it was a little bit more explosive. So it was less efficient on average, but it had moments where, you can come back from 33 points down at halftime, or 3 score leads in multiple occasions. I mean, all that stuff happened a ton, right? They had like so many fourth quarter comebacks and he was like clutch Cousins, right? I think that made a clutchness out of Cousins that wasn't there before. But you still had some of the, some bozo stuff, some interceptions he can't explain. There was the one, I think it was against the Bills, where he just threw it to the wrong guy out of the corner of his eye, just got the jerseys mixed up. It's like that never happens to an NFL quarterback. So you still have these like inexplicable things that will crop up from time to time, but otherwise mechanically sound quarterback that goes through his reads and colors inside the lines. And I think he was pushed a little bit by O'Connell to color outside the lines last year, and I think that had a good effect. I hope to see that continue. In terms of running back, of course, Dalvin Cook has left. He's a Jet. They cut him for cap room, and they did not replace him with a major signing or anything. They had Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler, who are already on the roster. They got a waiver claim in Myles Gaskin, and they drafted a guy that's on the practice squad now. That's all they got at running back. It's just a committee now. So if you're, if you're a Vikings fan that is, say, 15 years old and you're sophomore in high school, you have never seen a Vikings game without a Vikings team without like a bell cow running back, or gone into a season expecting there to be a bell cow running back. Obviously, guys have gotten hurt and stuff, but you went right from Adrian Peterson directly into Dalvin Cook. This is not a bell cow situation. This is still going to be, there's a clear first string guy. That's Alexander Mattison. And I'm very curious to see what he can do with this greater volume and opportunity. I thought he played a much more conservative brand of ball last year, and I think that was great for him. I think that was exactly what he should do. He shouldn't be greedily bouncing everything to the outside. He is a lower your shoulder and punish you kind of back. And I think he embraced that style last year in a way that really paid dividends for him efficiency-wise. So I hope to see that continue. But then you've got, rotating guys. I call them rotatos. Ty Chandler, Myles Gaskin coming in, and then of course CJ Ham, who signed an extension and figures to hopefully get a lot more usage this year. They really did. They drilled a lot of fullback stuff, two-back stuff in camp, as well as tight end stuff. In the tight end room, of course, they have TJ Hockenson, who just signed a monster deal. By the way, later in the show, we have contract details and I have thoughts on them. So I am going to regale you with numbers and dollar amount stuff. So hope you're in for that. But he's obviously going to be tight end one. He'll be on the field for just about every play. And then maybe their biggest offseason acquisition outside of the draft was Josh Oliver. Josh Oliver, touted as the best blocking tight end in the league. That's an expectation that's really hard to repeat, by the way. I mean, he was like the best, highest graded by PFF last year. He's a fantastic blocker. Like he's very good, but best in the league. I don't know. That isn't a thing that goes to the same guy every year, But essentially they have like a specialist blocking tight end, like a guy who is here for that. And of course, Johnny Munt and Nick Muse as well, if they need to rotate in. So it kind of implies a lot of 12 personnel and a lot of 21 personnel, but they also have 3 wide receivers that are viable. So they really do have access to truly on-purpose starters at all of those personnel packages. And if one of them gets hurt, they can kind of resolve that by just using different personnel packages instead of having to put a backup in all the time. It can give them a weird kind of depth. If Josh Oliver goes down with an injury, okay, well, we'll just do more 21 then, So those wide receivers, obviously there's Justin Jefferson, there's KJ Osborne, and then there's the new kid, Jordan Addison, first round pick. Looked awesome in camp, looked pretty good for what we saw of him in the preseason, which was like 7 plays. Very, very excited to see what he can come out and do. He's definitely become I'm going to draft him in the 14th round of every fantasy draft because nobody's going to give him the time of day kind of kid. I don't know. Maybe he's going higher than that. I don't really pay attention to fantasy ADP. But behind him, there's Jalen Naylor, who was sort of a camp standout, and then he got hurt and missed all of camp in the preseason, like most of camp in the preseason. He got hurt like the second day they had pads on or something like that. But in OTAs and leading up to that, he was looking really, really electric. So there's sort of a dark horse thing going on there. I'm going to guess mostly a special teams role just because it's, what are you going to do? Like sit down KJ Osborne? I don't know. Maybe. And then Brandon Powell, who will be the punt returner. That's your wide receiver room. So if they want 11 personnel, they've got 3 starters. If they want 12 personnel, they've got, 2 tight ends that are starters. If they want to put in a fullback, they've got CJ Ham, who they're very excited with. They have access to all of that. And then on the offensive line, this is probably the part where people are going to be the most skeptical. What else is new? It's the same group of people, exact same group of dudes, top to bottom. The only different name is they traded Vidarian Lowe away last week to the Patriots around cutdown day. And then they brought in a guy from the Bills in David Quessenberry, who's like an old veteran dude that won't see the field because he's like tackle 4. It's the same group. It's Christian Darrisaw. Very excited about him. We're hoping we see another step forward from Ezra Cleveland. We're hoping we can kind of do the same thing with Garrett Bradbury, where he had a better year last year because he was more protected, and we're hoping to see a second-year leap from Ed Ingram. Brian O'Neill partially tore his Achilles last year. He's been full participation for a while now, so he should be good to go. So it's the same group of 5 people. So a lot of people didn't like that offensive line. I had certainly thought that maybe they should have tried, hey, Garrett Bradbury, love you. You're ready to go on to your next chapter. I kind of thought they would go draft someone. They didn't do that. They just brought him back. Hey, I'm going to be the last one to complain about it because that's my brand. But that's going to be sort of if the offense goes totally belly up, that's going to be the first place everybody looks to say, could they have done more there? Because they didn't do anything serious on the offensive line. They really did run that back and value continuity. So there's your offensive personnel. So what does that actually mean strategically that the Vikings are going to try to do? That's going to be what is next here. But you've probably heard a whole bunch of names that you want to think about for fantasy football. And you've probably already had your fantasy draft, or maybe you're having it like literally today. But you can also get into Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game. You can pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower than one of their stats, and then root for them on kickoff day. You can go just pick like a whole bunch of Lions and Chiefs for the Thursday night game, or you can go pick stuff throughout the weekend. So if you want to build your dream team today, you can go over to their easy-to-use mobile app. Just search out Underdog Fantasy, or just go to UnderdogFantasy.com. And when you sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON, not only will Underdog double your first deposit of up to $100, but they also have a Pick'em special live right now in their Pick'em lobby. Patrick Mahomes just has to get 1 yard for your pick to be correct. I don't know if you're taking the over-under on that. I think I know where I stand. Remember, that's Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code LOCKEDON. Use the link in the description or scan the QR code if you are watching this on YouTube. Hey, so FYI, on the podcast feed and in the YouTube world as well, there's going to be stuff beyond just the Locked On Vikings podcast going up on this feed. We're going to have some ultimate NFL preview stuff. I got together with all the other NFC North hosts, and we answered some questions. Who's going to be the best quarterback? What's a team that might surprise and make the playoffs? All that kind of stuff. We debated about it. It was really fun. So those are going to go up here. We'll still have all of the regular Locked On Vikings episodes. We'll go Monday through Friday like normal, but there's also going to be other stuff. So, be ready for that. And hey, go enjoy it. It's really fun. Moving along, I want to talk a little bit more about the pass game schematically, but let me talk to you about what the offense is going to be this year. What are they trying to do? And this is going to be more of a scheme segment, but also sort of a philosophy segment. And to start there, I have to start a little bit with the run game. I have spoken ad nauseum about the run game. I've done like 4 episodes about it. So you can go listen to those for more detailed breakdowns, but essentially here is the deal. Last year, they were a weak side zone team with a lot of jet motion. That's the McVay way to do it, where you run off tackles, outside zone or mid zone toward the tackle, away from the tight end. So you're essentially trying to go toward the smaller guys on the defense. And then maybe using a little bit of like jet sweep motion, have a wide receiver run across the formation to try to create a little bit of misdirection. It's a very simplistic thing to do, and it essentially is like an unserious run game. And that's part of why the run game was so bad last year, was that it was very undiverse. It was sort of just there to set up play action, and they didn't really care about establishing it. And it was bad. And then they couldn't, so they struggled to hold leads and stuff. And they got really inconsistent because they had to throw all the time, and the passing volume was insane. I think the passing volume will probably chill out a little bit, but I don't think they're going to become like a run-heavy team. But they put a lot of effort into fixing that run game. So they're going Shanahan side of things now. They were McVay side of things. Now they're going Shanahan side of things, which means a lot more skill players as blockers. And that's not just wide receiver blocking. The McVay thing really needs wideouts to block. We still do, but we're going to have a lot more Josh Oliver and CJ Ham in there, right? And a lot more diversity in concepts. It's still a zone run team, but they will mix some power, which is different, and some similar concepts, counter concepts. They ran some of it in the preseason, but also a lot of using skill players to block, which is a way of, you can have a fullback and a tight end, double team an edge rusher. And that means that all your other offensive linemen get to be in double teams with each other. So you don't have Garrett Bradbury one-on-one with the nose tackle, or Ed Ingram one-on-one with a quick 3-tech. Kind of protecting those players by using your skill players more. That's the philosophy generally. Again, for more details, you can go find other episodes. I've spoken a lot more about like what the concepts are and stuff. But that's basically what you need to understand. Passing game-wise, the main relationship with the run game is in keepers, rollouts, bootlegs, whatever you want to call them. Most of the keeper concepts are going to be flood concepts. That's usually what you'll run off of a bootleg. Now, I use the word flood concept very, very, very broadly. Anything with a 3-level read. Something deep, something intermediate, and something shallow, right? Most of the time, that'll be on the same side of the field as the rollout. It won't always be, though. Sometimes you'll do like Yankee stuff with a clear out, then a deep over coming from the other side of the field, and then usually you have some kind of check down. There's all kinds of different variations down the field to do that, but generally it's something long, something medium, something short. And the something short can be used as a sort of stand-in for quick game. Quick game can get really samey if you use too much of it. This is the Clint Kubiak problem, I think, in 2021 with the offense. But if you just run a lot of stick and a lot of slants, like eventually is like, okay, this is just like this the same offense we've been seeing since Joe Montana ran it. Everybody knows how to defend it now. But if you use rollouts kind of as your quick game, you can get that play action benefit on it and also still have like rhythmic hitters that can help get guys into rhythm, get a quick 7 yards on first down and set yourself up in favorable situations and sort of start establishing things. It's a great way to start the game. There's 3 different kinds of quick game keepers, I guess I'll tell you about. One is I'll call them flash, delay, and slide. So Bobby Peters has a few of the books that are behind me on YouTube here. And he actually just did a whole thing about keepers. I want to read it soon. But I know from the Rams one, which is where I got a lot of the information about the Vikings last year, and they're still going to run a lot that, this is from the 2021 Rams. They're still going to run a lot that Kevin O'Connell ported over from this team, but in particular, I want to focus on keeper, delay, slide, and flash. So keeper flash is essentially you play action zone to the weak side. So you make it look like there's a run going away from the tight end, and then you bootleg the other way. So now you're bootlegging to the same side that the tight end is on. And then the tight end will basically flash a quick block. Like he won't even really commit to it. He'll just say, okay, here's a quick block, and then he'll run out and be the check down. The Vikings hit Nick Muse in the preseason recently for a really big hitter off that in like the first quarter with Jaron Hall last year, or last week against Arizona. That's a nice like staple rhythm play. There's also keeper slide, which looks like what's called split zone, which is, again, if you take a zone run and you run it to the side where the tight end lines up, but instead of the tight end just blocking there, which they'll also do that, but instead of the tight end just sitting and blocking there, he'll run all the way across the formation to the backside and go blow up like an edge rusher that's trying to chase it down. Or you fake that, and now suddenly he has a running start going the opposite way of all of the defenders, and so is the quarterback. And that will get a decent, get open a decent amount of the time, and is a really difficult thing to read. And if teams are paying attention to keeper slide, split zone is probably going to kill them, because they really shouldn't have, defenders flowing the opposite way of the run because they're worried about a play fake. You're basically getting that defender completely out of the play. That's a really big plus in the run game. There's also keeper delay, which is going to have some of the same stuff, but you add a wide receiver in it. Now, I understand keeper delay to be the one where there's 2 checkdowns now, kind of check down options, but then still the intermediate and the long thing. And you read all of these short to long. So it's really a quick hitter, but if for whatever reason the short thing isn't there, you go, okay, well, maybe there's a chunk, maybe they all committed too hard to go up, and we'll punish that with an intermediate, chunk. Or maybe they really committed and somebody's wide open down the field. We can actually get a big play out of this, but that'll take longer to develop. So in the meantime, we'll see if the short stuff and the intermediate stuff is there. But keeper delay will have the same thing as flash, where you have the tight end sort of feign a block. He'll usually delay. It's delay, right? So he'll usually delay it a little more. He'll actually commit to that block a little bit more. And then you'll have like a slot or a wide receiver or someone pretend they're doing an angle block of some sort. But then after a few steps, they start to work toward the same side that the quarterback is rolling out to. So you kind of have, it's a great way to defeat if they have like a zone defender there that is supposed to take that check down. Now you give them 2 guys and you can split that guy in half. That's the keepers. And then you got like weird throwback screens and stuff off of the rollouts as well. And some shot plays and stuff, of course, that read long to short instead of short to long, because they want to go deep. But you also have, regular drop back concepts. And a lot of that stuff from last year, I think, will remain roughly the same. A lot of the same choice, if you remember choice, if you listened to this show last year, which is like a 5 or 6 yard option route. That's a really good thing to give to Justin Jefferson. And it's essentially a great way to make like leverage wrong. It's again, a good like first down, let's get 7 yards kind of play. Stuff like bow and which is an arrow route or like a little hitch that's meant to pin a defender down, and then you run a dig behind it right into that defender's zone. That's a really good like 3rd and 7, 3rd and medium kind of play. And a lot of the stuff that they ran last year will, I think, stay roughly the same. All of the let's get the ball to Justin Jefferson stuff, but now we actually have a run game and a play action game to sort of punish if they really want to back all their safeties off onto the moon to be so scared of Justin Jefferson. Hopefully we can get big and knock him off the ball. That's, I guess, the major strategy with the run game. And then, of course, guys like Addison and Hockenson also being part of major progressions, hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit more separation. So if they are double teaming or even triple teaming Justin Jefferson, we can take advantage of the one-on-ones that are left there elsewhere. In the same way, Hockenson would put up like $150, in games where Jefferson got doubled really bad. And hopefully we have Addison to further punish that. And hey, KJ Osborne's no slouch too. So it's going to be a lot of personnel shifting, a lot of different looks, and it's hopefully going to make the Vikings really hard to prepare for offensively. And they did not spare much in building this sort of personnel. They spent more on CJ Ham. They're spending the most in the league on tight ends. They, of course, spent a first rounder on Addison. But it's that tight ends thing that's getting a lot of talk, and I do want to update you on the contract details, which I promised I would do on Friday when I recorded like right after he signed. So we're going to get into that, shift gears, do a little bit of money talk here. But one of the players that really affected this TJ Hockenson contract is Darren Waller. And he's also a great fantasy option, as is told to us by eBay Motors and fantasy football host Vinny Iyer, who are teaming up this year to give you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So whether you are still waiting for a draft or you're scouting the waiver wire later in the season, they're going to be there for you. If you want a player who you can take maybe a little later in the draft, who will spark his new team's offense. Players change teams and maybe he's a Giant now, and maybe he'll give them a dimension that the Giants have been looking for. Darren Waller is an interesting kind of luxury pick. If you've got, a roster you're okay with and you're looking to take a flyer, maybe around like 7-8. He has reportedly been super locked in with Daniel Jones and is ready to sort of revive his career after a couple of weird years with the Raiders. And hopefully he'll be a more reliable cog at tight end, especially if you didn't go very hard on tight end earlier in the draft. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, they understand that it's all about fit. It's all about how Darren Waller jives with his new offense, or how your team jives with what you drafted earlier, right? How your zero RB strategy, jives with the actual running backs you'll end up playing. And it's the same thing with your car, and that's where eBay Motors comes in. Whether it's air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, whatever, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they have a system that makes sure that it's right for your vehicle. It's got to be the right fit, right? You can't put an incompatible part in the car, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. eBay Motors is there for you. Just look for that green check. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. The right fit, the right parts, the right prices. At ebaymotors.com, let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Moving onward here with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. This is the contract part. So TJ Hockenson's contract details are now released in full, thanks to overthecap.com. And I believe they were the first ones to actually report it. I know Tom Pelissero gave us like some hints, but they have the actual like year by year cap hits and stuff at Over the Cap. And here's what we're looking at. It's a pretty standard Rob Brzezinski contract. Longtime listeners will know exactly what I mean by that, but it's a 5-year deal that is basically a 3-year deal. And then it gets really easy to get rid of going into year 4 and really easy to get rid of going into year 5. So it's a 3-year commitment with 2 major years on the end to make it so that the agent can get a good headline. And there's a media literacy thing here. Arif Hassan at Wide Left, he came on the show last week, actually did a whole thing about like, we got to be careful with the way that we like consume contract reports. Because when you hear $17 million a year, it includes a lot of money that TJ Hockenson might not see. It's got the $2.5 million of incentives in there. It has $21.6 million cap hit in 2027. He'll be 30 by then. I have a feeling that one's not going to stand. It'll either be restructured or maybe just a cap casualty in general. I mean, that's 4 or 5 years from now. Who knows what kind of player Hockenson will be. And that's really a lot of what these contracts are, is they're signed and designed to be a commitment for a certain amount of time and then a conversation for the rest of the time. And I wonder, a lot of people really don't like that. They don't like the idea that, if you just look at the way people talked about Dalvin Cook's contract, that contract was always meant to be 3 years and then we're cutting him before year 4, which would have been this year. And people are like, this is a failure in negotiating. They made a bad decision by signing Dalvin Cook. And it's like, they kind of always intended to do this. This was the plan. Now, you can disagree with the plan being inefficient because there's dead money on it. And you can critique the plan in that way, but that's not really what people are saying. And so I think with a Brzezinski contract, you have to understand you got 2 years very affordable, 1 year where you kind of balance affordable and committed, and you could cut him, but it's a really bad idea too. They would take like 12 mil dead or something, like 10 mil dead money. They would only save 4.3 million if they cut him in after 2 years, and they don't intend to cut him after 2 years. Obviously for 2023 and 2024, they were never going to cut him. They could have tagged him, right? And had team control for those 2 years. So that was always 100% of a thing. So if they do end up cutting him before the 2025 season, then it means they didn't have to extend him at all. I have a feeling that's not the plan right now, unless, he suffers a whole bunch of crazy injuries and the situation changes a lot in a way that we can't possibly foresee. Then we kind of have to take that as it comes. But there's also some vested guarantees. I explained that on Friday, which is functionally it's guaranteed salary and you don't really have to worry about it. It's going to make the cap calculator stuff look a little weird if you're playing around with that. So be aware of it, but it's really just a different way of guaranteeing a player's salary that like changes how the organization pays its taxes. You don't have to care and like how they do their cash flow. It doesn't matter. But that leaves cap hits that still feel pretty big. He's about a $5 million cap hit this year, down from a $9 million cap hit. So they did open up a little bit more cap space this year. We'll see if that affects the Justin Jefferson extension or if they just want to roll some over to help take the sting out of the dead cap of Kirk Cousins and Hunter and stuff next year. But so they've done that. But 2024 is a $14 million cap hit. That feels like a lot, right? 14 mil. Oh my God, that's an 8-digit number. Well, I looked at it, and in 2024, that cap hit will rank 7th among tight ends. If you think TJ Hockenson's about the 7th best tight end, he's making 7th best tight end money. That feels about fair. And in 2025, his cap hit goes up to 15 million. That'll be 8th among tight ends. So it's like in that, around that area. If you look at 26 and 27, which is too far in the future for this to really be that good of an experiment, because how many tight ends are going to sign contracts between now and then? But if you wanted to, okay, he'll be the 3rd highest tight end in 2026 if no other tight ends sign big contracts. That includes like there's, George Kittle is not under contract past that year. Like Travis Kelce isn't there. Dallas Goedert, guys whose contracts will have expired that will probably have extensions. I mean, some of those guys are older, but you know what I mean? And guys that were maybe in the draft that will break out, and we don't know who that is yet. And then in 2027, he's currently got the highest 2027 cap hit. I have a feeling that won't stand. So if you think about it that way, I would venture a guess that in 2024, 2025, and 2026, he's going to be somewhere in the top 10, but not the top 5 of paid tight ends. And he's probably conservatively, he's somewhere in there. I think you can make an argument that he does belong in the top 5 of tight ends if you really wanted to debate the merits of other guys that are like sort of on that, like Dallas Goedert or whatever. I don't really care to do that, so you can rank him wherever you want. But that feels fairly reasonable in terms of contract structure. And again, there's like a flexibility to this. There's not a ton of prorated bonus. There's an $18 million signing bonus, so 3.6 a year. So by the time we're looking at this cap hit as something we maybe want to restructure, he'll have $7.2 million in bonus left over, 15.4 in base salary. So you could restructure a ton of that, and it'll be one of those things where they could save $9 million with a stroke of a pen that TJ Hockenson doesn't even need to answer the phone about. They'll be very, very set up to do that move. And you can kind of tell that that's probably what they intend to do, is to do that move and then maybe talk about taking that 2027 year off. And you can kind of tell that final year was inflated a little bit at the end, because Adam Schefter had the market resetting contract deal. This does not reset the tight end market. He's going to be about 7th or 8th paid throughout the life of it. But hey, that last year's got a lot of money on it. So we can say he's making more money average annual value than Darren Waller. And that's sure is technically true, but it's not practically going to play out that way. So really, that's just so that the agent can get a tweet about how he negotiated this great deal for TJ Hockenson that he can go send to college players later that he wants to get it under his wing before they get drafted. That's the way that contract reporting works, by the way. It's the agents tell reporters, hey, we just got a market setting contract. And then people like Schefter will just like tweet that. And you just have to like understand that like what you're being fed is coming from a certain source, and that certain source may have a vested interest in the particular wording of how this gets reported, and then how it spreads to all the other blog sites and outlets and people like me that report on it, how it gets, disseminated. And sometimes it's the opposite. It's the team that will report it and say, yeah, we signed a team friendly. If you ever say he will sign a team friendly contract, it's like, who's saying it's team friendly, right? I'm sure that's a matter of opinion. It's a media literacy thing. So I think that Hockenson will be we'll say he's the 6th highest paid tight end. No, that's actually just objectively. He's the 7th highest paid tight end on average throughout the life of the contract. I think we can all get behind that and be pretty happy with it. And I think I would have been, like I said on Friday, I would have been furious if they didn't do it. So I think this was so much of a no-brainer. Anybody suggesting that they would like trade Hockenson away or let him walk after this year or something like that, I think just wasn't looking very hard in this situation. Tomorrow is Twitter Tuesday. You can ask me questions. You can yell at me about this if you disagree with me, but put it in the form of a question and then I'll answer it. You can find the Google form in the show notes if you have a question, or you can leave a YouTube comment if you want. You can tweet it at me at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings on Twitter, or send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. However you get it to me, I'll find it somehow. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skol.